I want to talk about VRChat. You see, VRChat can mean so many things to so many different people. Whether it be positive or negative depends on what you experienced. Many friendships and relationships started here, and many ended. What VRChat was before is not at all what it is today. We're going to be exploring some of the many reasons people were drawn to this game once upon a time, and how times have changed how we interact with people. To make things easier, I'm going to let you into the world that I experienced. I was introduced to VRChat in 2018 by my community on Twitch following the Uganda Knuckles meme. It was here when I had loaded the game up for the first time. It's funny because at the time, I didn't realize just how significant those moments were. After a few days of logging in, I was off for 2 years before my cousin got me back into the game by letting me try his VR headset. I found myself returning to the game on desktop and meeting as many new people as I can, until eventually I was introduced into a little community. Our group was mostly Australians and Americans, with the occasional Europeans dropping in whenever they could meet our time schedule. The significance of where we're from will make sense later when I delve into how diverse VRChat can be. There was one world in particular that we would all go to, but unfortunately the world owner has since removed it. The truth is, it wasn't exactly an aesthetically pleasing or fun world, but rather it was, as silly as it sounds, a place to call home that we all felt drawn to. I know that sounds stupid. How could something within a video game be considered home? At that point, it's just addiction, right? For some people, VRChat was their escape. For others, it was merely where you would go to spend time with your friends and explore worlds together. It is also a place where some have perhaps found their significant other, or built a career out of, whether it be from live streaming, avatar, or even world creation. VRChat, or I suppose virtual worlds in general, are almost limitless when it comes to possibilities. I don't know what you experienced, but there's something beautiful in knowing that while I was sitting on a bench in a vibrant and peaceful environment, you were probably ERPing on that same bench in your own world. I'm joking, kind of. But the point I'm making is while I was exploring, you probably were too. Those feelings that I had seeing certain things for the first time, I wonder if they were similar to what you felt. I've played many games in my time, but I can't say that I ever felt as connected with people as I did until I got my first VR headset and started exploring maps themed after some of our favorite games and discussing our passions with one another. In my honest opinion, this is what made the game the best. Exploring public worlds, finding people to befriend, and then exploring worlds together. It could never last forever. It wasn't supposed to. We all grew up, our lives either started or took a different path. Sadness is what you're left with when you're chasing memories that have already passed. In a way, the harder we hold on to what has been, the sooner we notice we won't appreciate what could be. That doesn't just apply for VRChat, of course, but I'll try to stay on topic. You can find another group of friends. You can recreate the same moments even today, but will you be able to enjoy it as much as you once did? Will you let yourself? When everyone's lives were moving forward and mine was feeling a little stagnant, I actually found myself enjoying the horror maps VRChat had to offer around Halloween. There was something about this time of year that drew the community together, almost forcing people out of their comfort zone of being in a private world all the time. This led me into trying to discover as many horror-themed worlds as I can and allowed me to connect with the VRChat community once again. It was during this time that I then found one of my favorite worlds called the Smile Room. Have you ever found a world you couldn't quite explain? Like you just couldn't comprehend what the idea or reasoning behind creating it even was? Those worlds that feel like they were never meant to be discovered. I feel like these worlds were the ones that terrified me the most, but we'll get to that in a future video. In my time of being in VRChat, I have met a lot of people that have inspired me. And I've also met a lot of people who I would hate to see my life without. I've learned so much about life all around the globe and how society functions within those countries too. But I think at one point, much like a lot of others, it almost felt more enjoyable to be in a headset than to be in the outside world. At some point, it turns into addiction, something you rely on as your escape rather than something you do every now and then. Before I go into any more detail, I don't want anyone to feel judged. Your reasons are your own, and I don't know what kind of life you have lived. Besides, I think my hours in this game are exactly why I'm making this video. Mirror dwelling. What does it even mean? Nowadays, a lot of people would rather spend more time sitting in front of a mirror than finding worlds to explore with friends, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Their preference could simply just be different. I don't know why everyone was drawn to that activity as much, but it's funny how we went from being confused why people would do it to one day having a neuron activate and a realization of, oh, now I'm doing it too. Mirror dwelling to me, I believe, was my way of waiting for someone to spark up conversation. Rather than approaching someone, I think people just felt more comfortable with the idea of waiting for someone to approach them. And I suppose at one point, the idea of having a conversation with someone any other way just felt too unfamiliar. I know it sounds a lot like I'm talking about the negative things when it comes to VR chat, but that depends on your perspective on everything I've said so far. Honestly, I think there's many great things about the game, and we'll get to the really alarming parts soon, but I haven't even scratched the surface yet. The diversity on VR chat is one of the most exciting things about this game. There are so many examples of this when you consider what country the people you meet are from, what some of their interests are, what kind of cultures they have, their personality, what their background's like, and what kind of interactions you're gonna have with them.
This is the best thing ever!
Where did he go?
Ah! God! What are Bambi's pronouns?
I'm girl.
Gal. Gal? Oh, hell no! Sign up for this I gotta get out!
So here is where I'll be delving into what I truly feel is hurting not just VR chat, but the people within it. Some of these topics may be triggering for some, so please be warned. I will be covering topics such as alcohol, self-harm, and the dangers of children being in VR chat.
Catfishing might be one of the scariest things when it comes to this game because you don't really know who's on the other... That's crazy. You don't know who's on the other side of the line.
If you don't already know, catfishing is the action of pretending to be somebody else by using a false persona or identity. Typically, it is used to lure someone into a false sense of hope in the form of a relationship that is built on lies. Usually, victims of this are used for financial gain or sometimes even just comfort. You see, the thing is, not knowing the intentions of a catfish makes it all the more terrifying to think about, especially when you consider the trust you have to give in order to meet someone in person who you met online. Remember, this doesn't just happen to adults, but potentially children too. And the worst part about it is you never know the lengths that catfish will go through to get what they want. Earlier in the video, I did mention that some have found their significant other in this game, and that part is very much true. I will not judge those who have had the courage to go through with online relationships. In fact, I think some would admire the dedication and commitment. But have you ever seen a catfishing story and said, that couldn't possibly happen to me? It could. And I just suggest you go that extra step to create boundaries that are safe and suit the comfortability of both you and your partner. One of the biggest problems with VR chat is the alcohol. Yes, I've mentioned how fun being inside of your headset can be when you're hanging out with friends and exploring worlds. So involving alcohol or other substances would only seem like it enhances the experience, right? Some of the drinking worlds have been in the game for a very long time, and they're still as popular as they once were, if not more. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a drink here and there. One of the biggest mistakes that many of us make is getting way too involved with the drinking community or culture. The problem with everyone being in different parts of the world is that everyone is drinking at different times or days. And so because of this, you go from drinking your typical Friday nights to then Fridays and Saturdays, and then Mondays, and then Wednesday. And then eventually you've developed a pattern that many others have when you're drinking every second or third day. The worst part of it all is not even knowing how much you've consumed because you're in your headset. You're the most social you've ever been and everyone wants you to drink. There's pressure to keep going and people would rather you drink as much as them so they don't feel guilty about their choices. I myself have witnessed the level of toxicity in the drinking community when I didn't feel like drinking one night and got kicked from the instance shortly after choosing not to drink. It was disturbing to me that unless I drank, I wouldn't be allowed to speak to my friends. Most people are genuinely forgetting to eat, so you're dealing with a lack of nutrients and alcohol in your system at the same time, and probably dehydration. You see, VR chat will have you not noticing that hours have passed, so it's not unheard of that you've probably forgotten to go make dinner during your gaming session once or twice. Mental health issues have seemed to become a trend. Bios are littered with every mental health diagnosis a person has or think they have. Suddenly everyone has DID and BPD. Of course these illnesses exist and I don't doubt some of the people in these games do suffer from these things, but I think it is incredibly upsetting to see it being used in a horrible way to excuse poor behavior or I suppose even for attention. One of the worst things I've seen in this game in all of my time on it is people in the middle of a public lobby harming themselves physically. The truth is, there's no way to know whether people are lying or not. And so although knowing that, I tried my best to stop someone I had seen in a public instance from hurting themselves any further. They had supposedly cut themselves and were bleeding a lot, and seemed very frantic and afraid. By the end of it, they did calm down and everything was okay. But it is one of those things that I could see being very traumatizing for most people. We aren't exactly prepared for those things when we get on the VRChat. I have also heard so many different stories, some which didn't have a good ending, and apparently some people have died within their headsets. I do not know if these things are true, so I can only really speak from my own experience. Knowing all these things, just remember that children are present and are also witnessing these things whether it is common or not. I am unsure if VRChat was ever meant to be a game that catered to kids, but I do think it's a game that over time I've realized how complicated the dynamic becomes when these worlds are so diverse that you have a group of adults in one area with avatars that waddle like they have Kim Kardashian's ass injections.
Hi, how can I take your order today? What is that?
I'm gonna walk up there and get me a cheeseburger.
And kids with the same capabilities of being in the same environment. It becomes chaotic. Most avatars were just silly characters, but as time changed, so did the style of avatars that people wear, and the same goes for the conversations people felt comfortable talking about in these public places. I think it's great that nowadays there are tools implemented to help separate groups. It does provide a healthier way of keeping adult activities away from the children, but I do think regardless it doesn't really solve the issue entirely. People have found a way around the age verification. At first, the state of public worlds was honestly kind of annoying. You'd load in, you requested your age and date of birth by the world owner, and they'd grant you access to the instance, which kids were very much capable of just making it up anyway. And honestly, sometimes it felt less like it was about protecting children, and more so about having the power to remove people from instances. Can't even tell you how many times I've been randomly kicked by owners looking for any reason to use their kick or ban tools. This update, although it was meant to be a positive one, somehow made the game more toxic than it already was. Then it moved into actually providing your ID on the VRChat website and having a badge next to your name in game that showed you were above the age of 18, which I think did help. Not fully, but it did help. This update for whatever reason didn't stop people from creating non-18 plus instances and still asking for age verification. So you're left with the same situation as before, but just a little less frequent. And suddenly more in-game bios were written like a Tinder profile, which makes me kind of wonder. Was the intention ever to make friends, or was it something else? Perhaps there is no correlation, but it was something that I did notice.
Again, your intentions and reasons for playing are your own, but I do think it's a bit of the explanation for why people felt less and less comfortable finding new people to interact with in public places.
I know it's harsh to say and maybe a little controversial, but I think at this point adults have taken over the space, and because of this, I do think the time has come we acknowledge that there isn't really a spot for kids on this game anymore. I know it's hard for them to understand, but all you can really do is block children whenever you hear one to protect them if the space you're in isn't healthy for them. Sure, there are wholesome worlds being released, but even some of the pictures are incredibly suggestive, and some of these world names are just not appropriate for kids. I'm unsure if we can restore a healthy balance this far into VRChat's world and avatar system. I've seen a lot of VRChat videos lately, and some of which I found incredibly funny because they delved into some of the inner circles of these communities and without actually attacking anyone, managed to capture some pretty outrageous moments. It did show how absorbed some people were into the game, including myself for a time being. Unfortunately, it did create the opportunity for other creators to start making similar content, which some videos just ended up becoming more along the lines of bullying, more than it was about actually exploring these communities inside of VRChat. I definitely think some of these videos were justified, especially because some of the people were potentially putting kids at risk or involving themselves in illegal activity. But I don't think it was necessary to start finding reasons to attack someone for being on the game a little longer than they should be, or attacking someone's physical appearance. Some of the people in these videos honestly just got attacked and didn't deserve it. Whereas there is the other end, where I'm incredibly glad some of these communities were shown that their activity was putting people or kids in danger. But I think the intention got lost along the way, and rather than trying to build a positive, healthy environment, it became more about pressing someone's buttons and gaining a following. Public lobbies nowadays is new upcoming streamers or content creators recording people and bullying them because their opinion is that they are wasting time on the game. I think it's great to have an opposing opinion, so I'm never actually bothered by someone feeling that way. And I hope this video serves as a good response to that question, because I truly don't feel like it was a waste of my time. I'm very grateful that there are creators out there putting a stop to a lot of the alarming situations unfolding within the online world. The why of what you are doing is what matters the most. Those creators are not at fault for people being influenced to profit off of what we chose to give publicity. At the end of the day, we click those videos and we laugh. But nowadays, public instances are riddled with people with bad intentions. At some point, you're having to block dozens of people a day. It almost outweighs the positives of going into public places anymore. What was once considered a safe space for people has become the same place they feel judged. From my perspective, I can still see people enjoying VRChat, but probably not in the way that we once did. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I just mean that you can find good people amongst the mess, and those friendships will be worth all of that trouble. But unfortunately, you will need to be willing to accept the state that VRChat is in, which does mean a lot more blocking, a lot more ignoring, and a lot more patience. Trolls are actively looking for you to respond so they can pick it apart and find something else to get you to react. And sometimes the best response truly is none. You can always be part of the good that helps restore that sense of community in the game once again. By now, you'd probably think the game is too far gone, and your feelings would be valid. But still till this day, creators are actively making worlds in an attempt to bring everyone together again to help promote social interaction in a healthier way. One of my favorite worlds nowadays is a simple fishing world. It's a fun little world where players can level up as they fish, which doesn't sound too captivating, but the added element of sitting with a group of friends or meeting new people makes the experience far less silly than it sounds. It also removes that need of being in front of a mirror to interact with people. The world essentially replaces that mirror with a fishing rod and a cute little bucket to put your fish in. I do recommend giving this world or something similar a try someday, rather than your typical midnight rooftop or black cat lobbies. There are so many niche little communities within VRChat that I've discovered over time, some of which I only heard of recently. You just need to know where to look. If you can maintain a healthy balance between the real world and virtual reality, your real life relationships would most likely not be affected negatively too. Through all of the worlds constantly getting released into the game, there are some that I've found that remind me of how wonderful VRChat can be, and sometimes educational, if once again you know where to look. A world I explored recently was the Vincent van Gogh Museum, which takes you through a virtual experience of visiting a museum and learning more about the life and work of Vincent. Education in the form of an immersive experience to me absolutely shifts things to a whole new level. I always knew about the symbolism behind sunflowers, but it wasn't until I was on this virtual journey where I was reminded of them again. I felt gratitude to be in an environment that not only was created through technology that I was able to bear witness to in my lifetime, but also reminded me to be appreciative of what came before all of this. Life really has come a long way. If you made it this far into the video, I really just want to say thank you. Creating this has been a journey that I'm glad we could all be part of together. My hope is not that VRChat goes back to how it used to be, but rather that people watching this can see the light in the dark. There's always the potential for things to get better if you're willing to see the good that still exists. If you've never been on VRChat, I wouldn't blame you, but if you do choose to try it out someday, let this video serve as a reminder to you that exploring a little more will bring you some of your best moments and pull you away from all the negative things. Give it a chance. Funny thing about VRChat, it comes full circle in a way. The process starts with a little seed, an idea of what's to come. It grows from one idea before it can bloom into multiple. Each world created is like a new leaf on the stem that connects us all together, and before you know it, those moments blossomed into the most beautiful moments you could have in a virtual world. So when the time comes, and passes, you could be part of the reason that it forms once again.
This whole video is pointless. We're gonna get the f out of these headsets. The point I'm making is while I was exploring, you probably were too. Those feelings that I had, what... I gotta fucking speak. God damn it. All the bad words that I'm not supposed to say. I'm joking, kind of. But the point I'm making is while I was what the f? What was that? What was that? What happened to my controller? Hello? Knock knock? Sorry. I'm joking, kind of. But the point I'm making is while I was what? 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 Okay. That was good. That was probably good. Let's try it again just in case. Never know if I f something up. I wish you could be here.
I'm gonna walk up there and get me a cheeseburger.
I just walked into my wall. Ah, what the f? Help. Oh, the shit you do for 12 views on YouTube. Oh shit, I'm still recording. My girlfriend probably thought that I was a woman because I just didn't want to speak to her. But I met her here. I'm not putting that in the video. That's f***ing crazy.